All right, thanks guys. Appreciate your time joining this presentation. I want to keep it fairly informal. I think we got a fairly small group, so if you guys have questions, go ahead and update the chat, or we can certainly open up mics and we can certainly talk through some of the things we'll highlight today, and hopefully you'll find this informative. We've been doing this content and kind of explaining kind of how we've been using all the tools for quite some time. And in this particular case, we'll kind of talk about how we did leverage really all the tools in our tool chest for COVID response and some of the benefits that we saw using the tools. So if you're a frequent user of the tools, some of this might be a little bit of a repeat, but if you're new to the tools, we'll try to give you a little bit of background as well to each of the different solutions. So again, thank you for your time today, and yeah, just feel free to put in some notes and we'll pay attention to that chat. So I do work at Children's Hospital, Colorado. I've been here 7 years and primarily in the financial systems area. So kind of a hybrid between finance and IT, as well as the operations area. And we do a lot of analytics work on our team. We're a team of anywhere from 5 to 7 folks, and we cover 8 to 10 different systems. Today we'll be focused on the forecasting ePBCS solution that we put in now going back 5 years, and how we did that, as well as talk about our Essbase platform, and then some things we're doing with analytics and open it up for dialogue. So, all right, so 3 tools. We're going to talk about 3 things, like we said. So how we used forecasting on the fly to tell us really quickly how things were going and possibly where things would be going. And I'd say possibly because I think that's one of the things we struggle with right now, is that we don't necessarily know exactly where our volumes are going to be in the next couple months. We have various projections, so we're kind of making different scenarios in play and kind of coming up with, well, definitely a plan for next year. 2022 forecast planning is very active and underway right now. We've got our volumes pretty well dialed in, and now we're just looking at the rest of the P&L and making assumptions. So we'll kind of highlight some of the ways we use the tool today, and hopefully that maybe corresponds with how you guys are using it, but also we've got some maybe some newer cutting edge ways of approaching that planning process or forecasting process. And then we'll get into some of the Essbase cubes, which hopefully you guys are familiar with the technology, but kind of talk about how quickly the tools have really progressed to the point where we can spin up cubes on the fly very, very quickly and answer some questions as they're coming to us at a pretty quick pace. We definitely saw that with COVID, that we had a lot of questions coming our way that were one, we had never seen certain situations and scenarios, so restacking our data a certain way to kind of answer those questions of what if things shift a certain way. So the cubes helped us kind of keep track of our data and make it consumable for our customers. And then we did a ton of work with different data visualizations tools, but we'll talk about how we've used Oracle Analytics tools and see things that we've staged. All right, so forecasting and planning in the cloud. I'm not going to go through too many of these. You probably have seen these maybe in other presentations, but we purchased the planning cloud solution going back now 5 years. We took a look and we're like, wow, it was 2016 that we actually put in the first version of ePBCS, and quickly got that spun up in a matter of only a few weeks, 6 weeks, to kind of get the licenses set up and then configure the tool for what we needed. And at the time, it was a pretty custom solution, very driver-based solution. And we wanted to leverage, as we put this in, our beyond budgeting concepts. So we don't put together a budget here at Children's Hospital Colorado. We do have a plan for the year, some goals that we set for the year, the fiscal year. But we're continuously forecasting, and currently we do it quarterly just based on what's happening in the market. But with COVID, we were definitely asked to turn around a new projection, new forecast in really a matter of a week. So The tools can kind of flex and scale based on your process. So we could be forecasting very, very quickly, certainly on a monthly basis if we wanted to, but we could even do it even quicker depending on how your data is staged. So today we go out 18 months on a rolling basis and we forecast out and then basically create 6 quarters of forecast. And we take a snapshot right now. We're doing a really hard look at 2022 and seeing how that'll come together. And then we'll do our board presentations into November, going into December, and then we'll see how that goes and then quickly adjust as more information comes online with the current health situation that we're in. So beyond budgeting has helped us tremendously. We get out some of the minutia and some of the details that sometimes burden a budgeting process. We try to be as unbiased as possible, look at what the trends have been doing. That's more recently been a little bit harder because of the fact that our business has really been impacted obviously by COVID. So some of the traditional cyclical seasonal volume trends are a little bit out the window, and we're kind of seeing volume where we don't usually see volume, and then quiet times where we normally see really busy times. So some of the predictive components that we hope to get into, it's been really hard to leverage some of that technology at this point, but we kind of move it a little bit more short term, and we can kind of see how things have been trending more on the last maybe 4 to 6 weeks and kind of leverage it that way. Some of our trends year over year definitely have been impacted by just really different scenarios that have been hitting us, which I'm sure you guys have all been experienced as well. So a couple of concepts that we did remove the word budget. Sometimes we do hear about that from people. It's like, well, it's not in our budget to do that. And I'm like, but I'm in finance and I'm not sure where you're getting your budget number from, but we don't use budgets. We use our forecast, and forecasts are tied, especially on all of our variable departments, to volume and rate that we're serving kids and getting them better. So we do a lot of unit of service ratios. So our expenses, labor per unit of service, supplies per unit of service, and then obviously revenue per unit of service, and then factor in payer mix on top of that. So some of the components, once you get down to it, things are pretty well dialed in. And if you can get rid of some of the, let's call it the minutia, and kind of have things more on a run rate basis for other controllable items, maybe it'd be like travel or things like that, although travel's been cut tremendously in the last year as well. So I'm interested to see kind of how we layer some of those things in for 2022 as some of the travel restrictions come off, and we see that. But usually those aren't terribly material. I mean, right now, as with any healthcare business, you're going to look at your revenues, and you're going to see what your mix is doing, and you're seeing mix and erosion and reimbursement. If you see that, that's going to pretty much chew up margin fairly quickly. Then you're going to see labor as your next focus, and we're seeing a lot of pressure with labor right now, as anybody is, with competition to get to talent and bidding up prices, wages, things like that. So we're taking that into account, but really focus on a couple core areas across all of our units, our main units, and then layer in administrative costs as part of that. Another thing that we did as part of our build was to do initiative planning. So we layer that in. So there's scenarios that are coming up for next year. We can name that scenario and then choose to whether we want to bring that P&L impact in or out based on different modeling assumptions. So we just turn a switch on and we can bring that impact of opening a new location or something like that in or out, depending on which scenario we want to take forward. But again, we're focused on key targets and then roll it up to each division, and less focus on the individual departments. So within the departments, there is definitely some ability to flex and have some judgment, especially on certain expense line items. So, and feel free to jump in and ask questions along the way. I can't see the queue, but you guys will keep me honest if I'm not seeing a question there. All right, so forecasting solutions. So, moving from a 5-week process to a few days. So the automation within the tool is very robust. So we can close our books one day and refresh our model the second day, and then basically recalculate and recast the next 18 months automatically. And at that point, you're kind of dialing in adjustments. So you can tweak what previous experience has been, and then take down your growth assumptions and do various overrides. So, but for the most part, it's very automated and really kind of focusing less on the mechanics of putting together and gathering a bunch of information to more, hey, this is what the trend is telling us. Now, how do we want to work adjustments to those particular trends? And then all of this does integrate back to our, it says on-premises cubes and dashboards, but now everything's on the cloud. So we're all on Oracle Analytics Cloud. So cubes are in the cloud, dashboards in the clouds, but that's just positioning of where they are. But the tools have been great in helping us see insights so we can model and then do some additional reporting on additional cubes.
Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt. I had to step
Sure.
away for a second. Did you see the question in the Q&A box?
See the, oh, there we go. Hold on. All right. If you can forecast ad hoc, let's do it less often. We found that quarterly is too much. Huh. Okay. Yeah, obviously you could turn it up or down. We definitely just have a sequence within our process to do it quarterly. If anything, we're definitely getting pushed more towards monthly, at least resets, just to get at least a top line of where things are heading at a summary level. But definitely you could do it on a trimester basis as well. It's a good question. All right. So I will keep that up. No open questions. All right. So now I got my questions board up. Thank you very much for that. All right. So forecasting, we've kind of talked about this already. The trend, we use the financials module, although we do have other options. That's been our primary focus up to this point. So let's see, I'm going to click here and roll forward. These are a couple screens just to give you an idea of what this looks like once you have the solution built. Again, our focus is primarily around volume, so we can set different statistics as a primary stat or a secondary stat, inpatient, outpatient, based on our GL mapping. So you can see that on this screen. And then we have some override rates. So we kind of have growth month over month, and then we can tweak those with an override or adjust these things on a percentage basis. Once you get your volumes dialed in, then obviously your revenue per unit of service flow in, and then you have your assumptions around charge adjustments, maybe around start of the year, depending on when your payers are going to take those in, and you'll do your pricing adjustments. Next slide here. So once, again, start with your stats, get your revenue pretty well solid. We do have a payer mix sheet that we built, which has the assumptions around where we see payers shifting. Within our particular situation as a children's healthcare organization, we do see a lot more Medicaid payer activity. So we're always sensitive to that based on the reimbursement we see with Medicaid. So that's kind of our key assumption. Where's Medicaid heading? Is it growing or decreasing? And with COVID, that was a very, very important indicator, obviously, as we were seeing potentially people lose insurance, move to Medicaid. And thankfully, it's pretty well settled out. It hasn't been as big of an impact as certain scenarios could have panned out. So once you have your revenue line set, then we move into the top line of your expenses, which is your labor. And on the labor side, we can break it out by different categories, dial in average hourly rates, and then layer in assumptions around premium pay, overtime. And what that definitely helps us do is keep some of the premiums that we're paying right now a little bit more isolated and create some more assumptions around that, where our base rates We still potentially are going to see some upticks in base, but we can choose to kind of turn on and off certain assumptions there as well to get a really good line of sight into our labor, which with any healthcare organization, labor is probably your number one expense, with supplies after that, and then everything else. All right, and then this just gives you a quick look at a screen. So once you've got things calculated out, you can look at a full P&L with your stats by department or by roll-up. And then this is our custom dimension, where we could choose to do certain initiatives by department or at a strategic level, model those in, and we kept those fairly high level. So we just have kind of a key and assumption around what's the revenue and expense assumption going to be. And those usually come from pro formas and things like that we put together. So you can just port those in. Good news too, and one of the things that a lot of our planners here on our team, not our team, but our finance team do, is we do use SmartView integration. So we do pull these forms that we've created on the cloud right into SmartView, and they interact with the forms in SmartView, so which is really good because a lot of data still from these plans are in Excel, so they can quickly move them in and upload it. We did have a physician visit model. We turned that off for this year due to some other priorities that we had, but this actually allows you to go down to visit assumptions by physician. So we could see what our top level physicians were doing and then mid-levels, and make certain assumptions around visit counts and what their capacity was potentially to grow based on scheduling templates. So a really good solution for if you have that, you can definitely build that component out in this tool. All right. And then lastly on the screen is, leveraging predictive, which we did some analysis during COVID around predictive. Really hard to see, historical trends are leveraged into predictive models for the most part, and how you kind of weight that. We're still, I guess, we're watching it. We're trying to leverage it again more for more real-time scenarios that are happening maybe 4 weeks, 6 weeks to kind of predict near-term where census is heading. But from a long-term perspective, it's really hard to tell at this point based on our knowledge, but we keep looking because that is obviously the next frontier to get more and more integrated with external sources and see what's happening. We do that kind of a little bit more on an ad hoc basis, but we definitely want to keep reaching for some of that. And I think more and more in the next coming years, you're going to see more and more that integration of external sources as well as what's happening internally. So what's happening with flu, what's happening with COVID, what's happening as other indicators in your area that might indicate volume shifting, market events, things like that. So we'll keep an eye on predictive, but if you guys have a different experience and want to share, definitely pipe in too as part of this discussion. All right, I'll pause there. Any questions about forecasting before we get into Essbase? And keep me honest, is there any questions out there? Nope.
And the Q&A box.
Nothing there. Okay. All right, quiet group up to 17 participants. All right, I will move on to Essbase. And Essbase, cubes on the fly. We always had a core set of cubes that we built, and traditional cubes, obviously every geo cube and maybe some other ancillary cubes, subledger cubes, things like that. But we've been really going deeper, and so we've gone upstream into our Epic system that we have and staging more information about the transactions up there. And we've had a lot of great success building and calculating stats that we load obviously into primary stats for our teams and do productivity, but because we load charges daily, we can then calculate the stats. And then we also have labor daily. So we've in a sense created, and we have created daily productivity stats for a lot of our variable groups. And we produce that every day. So by 9:30 every day, everybody's got their worked hours, statistics, productivity, relative to target, and we produce that. And obviously then, we smooth it because we know sometimes that can get pretty erratic depending on what's happening on any given unit, but we do kind of some moving averages as well as comparison to some benchmarks. So that all happens through kind of a myriad of different Essbase cubes that we've created and staged together. So for people that are new, Essbase is, again, it's a cube platform. It's been around for a long time. I've been using it for 22 years now, believe it or not. So Essbase, longtime user of Essbase. And really, I'd like to say, I mean, there's a lot of different technical components to it, but what you're really shooting for is getting data in a consumable format that people can ask questions to and navigate through the data, and really create a really good ad hoc place that's not too overwhelming. I've seen some tools where the navigation can be pretty good, but then it's so nice when our users are like in Excel, navigating through the data, double clicking, keeping and pivoting data in a pretty fast, robust way. And we take a lot of attention to staging it so it's really, really easy to navigate. So that's obviously one of the key things with the user interface, is to make it approachable and user friendly, so your users don't get confused about exactly what they're pulling on. Essbase interface is fairly easy to administer. Again, on the cloud, you can create cubes. There is a cube designer that's built into SmartView, so it allows you to download a cube if you've got a cube, and then modify that cube in Excel and then upload it, create a new one. And that became very, very helpful during our COVID time, because we could replicate cubes and potentially create 3 or 4 different versions of the same cube with different hierarchy assumptions or reorganization, and then kind of choose from that and then build kind of a final, maybe reorganized data set within the cube. So very, very quick way to stage data, replicate data, almost at the speed of thought, which was really good, because you kind of wanted to see your data, see how it was rolling up, and then tweak and continuously improve that. This is a couple screenshots that I'm showing you today are around a couple different cubes we're going to show you as the Kronos cube. So one of the systems that our small team supports is the Kronos application for both timekeeping and scheduling throughout our organization. So obviously there's a ton of data that you can tap into within the Kronos timekeeping system, and that gets you into your, like we talked about, the daily plan. So what's scheduled, how many resources do you have coming up for the next several days, and then also taking a look at projections around census. So one of the things we did put together was a good visualization that shows a 6-day forecast. So we can look at how our nursing plans look compared to our census plans, predictions, and really helps give them some insight if they need to course correct if they see that we're going to be short going into the weekend. So again, we do that. The backbone of that is, again, staging the data in the cubes, then pulling the data out and expressing that through different visualizations. Another cube, so we talked about labor. Peri-app was another one that was pretty easy to stage. Some teams struggled a little bit to get to some of their Peri-app data. And again, this goes back a little ways. Epic's done a little bit more work on staging some more of the Peri-app data. One of these cubes just came about because we were trying to reconcile activity that was happening in the Peri-app space compared to our stats. So, and the way we accounted for a surgical case versus how the different teams did. And one of those clear things, if you guys are in the Peri-app space, one of the things we struggled with, and you guys probably do as well, is that you may have a single case with a lead surgeon, but you also might have different subspecialties assisting during that. So we call those panels. So there could be up to 5 panels on a single case. So the question always is that a single case or is it all 5 panels? And when we get into surgeons and keeping track of case counts and things like that by surgeon, you can see you can kind of start to double count if there were two surgeons involved in a case. Was it 1 case or was it 2 cases? And this cube helps us reconcile that and show both views. All right, I think we've got a question in chat. All right. So is the Essbase solution the same versus the freeform solution in the cloud? Thanks. So I be completely transparent. I'm learning more and more about the freeform solution in the cloud. It is similar technology. The way you administer it's going to be a little bit different, but essentially the same outcome, where you're going to have a cube and then the possibility of interacting with that cube through SmartView. So there might just be a little different technique to how you administer that cube, but I'm learning as well. But I know they're doing more and more about exactly how many cubes you can have within your pod and things like that. What we're talking about today is Essbase that sits under Oracle Analytics Cloud, or OAC. And so it's standalone Essbase that we're talking about in this solution, which really is unlimited cubes and a lot of users that they log in and use them. So hopefully that helps answer that question. All right, a couple more screenshots. This is what it looks like when you're looking at doing Cube Designer within SmartView. And you can tweak these things, reload them. The great thing about it is you can make a really bad cube, and then you can have the opportunity to make it even better. So, but it is a fast way to import and design your cubes and push your data in. So hopefully it kind of helped answer some of the questions. I mean, some of the things that we got asked were, I'm sorry about that, in COVID response, we would always get, again, through the scenarios around staffing and scheduling, where we had to reorganize a lot of our labor pool into what they were traditionally doing into some other roles, as certain services were shutting down, but we still wanted to maintain our entire labor force. So we kind of had to redeploy and then pull them back. So keeping track of where everybody was at and what their roles were was essential. And so pulling that into a cube allowed us to spin different scenarios and assumptions, as well as roll up that activity, which then helped us create a lot of great reporting for reimbursement from different agencies and things like that. So really good tools to stage and keep track of your data. All right, I'm going to finish with the Oracle Analytics piece. Talk about some of our journey. So hold there. Let's see, I'm going to move the slide forward there. Okay, so Oracle Analytics, I think hopefully you guys have seen some of this already. It is their tool for creating dashboards and self-service analytics ad hoc. So we've used OBI dashboards here for 7 years. I've used them also in the past at another place where I work. So lots of experience creating just traditional OBI dashboards with some simple sets. And we've created some executive dashboards that show our monthly results, and they're really good. Since then, they've come out with data visualization, which is, I think, a very good tool, easy to use for doing some ad hoc analysis, getting some insight. And I'll tell you about some of those instances here in a second. But I won't go into too much extra explanation into what the tool is. I think there's some other sessions that go into more depth, but the promise is that it continues to evolve probably every quarter from Oracle. They release new and interesting information. I think the most recent news is that we did download the Oracle mobile app and got it working with our security. So we're really excited to move out on that platform. So we have like single sign-on through our two-factor setup on the mobile app, and that platform looks very promising to deliver some additional insights. Another thing that we looked at with Oracle as well was to look at their machine learning tools. So they've got probably what I'll just interpret as a customer is they've got kind of a light version of machine learning, artificial intelligence that's built into data visualization, which is great. Kind of helps you learn a little bit about the concepts. When we met with some of their developers, some of the things we were looking at doing really scale better on some of their, I'm forgetting what they refer to it as, but there's kind of their machine learning tools within the autonomous data warehouse, which surprisingly sounds really scary, but it wasn't too hard to set up or get kind of a test pod going pretty quickly, and kind of leverage some other tools within that. Because if you've done anything with machine learning or kind of building a model there, it definitely takes some trial and error. So tweaking some of the variables, there was a lot more opportunity on the autonomous data warehouse side compared with the light version that we had. And I know they're working to kind of bring some of that forward, but I know as a customer and somewhat not as much of a data scientist, I've got a lot to learn in this area. So look forward to continuing to work with that and learn more about it, and encourage you guys to do the same. All right, so dashboarding, I kind of went through this slide already and describing it. But again, we do use this. We have a daily OBI dashboard that shows our daily activity report as well as daily productivity, and then our month end. And then we've been using data visualization again on the predictive side. This is just one example where we were looking at PTO and understanding what was happening with PTO and what we want to do on the expense side. Because what we were seeing obviously with COVID was with so many travel restrictions, everybody traditionally had these different peaks of holidays that were happening. And then we were just heading into spring break mode when things started to shut down. So what happened was, just definitely more of a backup of PTO not being taken because there really was nowhere to go. So still some people were taking PTO, be with family, but we saw an opportunity to kind of, once we got into the summer months of 2020, to create a program for a little bit more PTO taking to keep us on track in that area. So we kind of saw the prediction there, and it was really easy to, again, stage and get insights in data visualization. One of my favorite tools in here, which I'll just go back one more, is that there's an explain feature, which I really love, that if you get on a particular measure, so if you take a data set, so it's as quick as this, that you could take an Excel spreadsheet, rows and columns, however big you want to make it, and then ingest that, upload that into data visualization. It'll interpret the rows and columns pretty quickly. You can tweak kind of the format of those rows or those columns, and then very quickly get to a point where you can draw some graphics around it. But once you get to a measure, what's kind of cool is that you can right click on that measure and hit explain. What happens there is it goes through and it kind of front loads a whole bunch of different visualizations around that measure, then gives you a pick list, and you can choose from there which visuals you like. So you can get, again, from upload to having a bunch of different visualizations in a matter of about 5 minutes. And obviously from there you can craft and tweak some of the visualizations and make them prettier. But if you're just looking for that insight, graphical insight, very, very quick to ingest and get some good insight. So this is just a quick example of our month-end report that our execs use to kind of see how overall financial and volumes are doing. And again, people interact with a lot of different tools. We probably have 20 different flavors of labor alone that we're sending out, different topics, different cuts. And with all of that, I think the deeper and more granular you can get and kind of get more and more insight, you can then kind of start to aggregate that back into your overall forecasting solution and take those insights into account and make good decisions around what your assumptions are and document those. So good insights on a very frequent basis, I think, leads to really good long-term forecasting as you move forward. So these are the 3 tools, again, that we used. Definitely want to close it out, open up the opportunity for more questions and dialogue. So hopefully you guys have found value in this presentation, and I look forward to just opening up. We can you can either do it through chat, or you can, well, I think we could open it up or unmute people. What do you guys think?
I can do it either way. If there's a button for raise hand, so if somebody wants to speak, if you'll click raise hand, I can unmute you, or you can pop your question in the Q&A box. I don't see anything coming through. You're welcome to give out your information if somebody has a question after the session, if they wanted to reach out. Totally up to you, but I don't see anything coming through at this time.
Okay. Yeah, feel free to introduce yourself if you're interested. I see some familiar names out there, others I've not met before, but if you want to raise your hand or introduce yourself to the group, that could be good too.
I do see one question. How did you acquire Essbase talent?
So it's a great question. It's kind of personal too, because I kind of am the Essbase talent. And then we also have another guy on our team that long-time Essbase as well. So we've been partners for a while, building out cubes. Boy, combined, we probably do have 35 years of experience in Essbase. And then the other thing too, though, which is pretty powerful, is you can build out talent within. So maybe that's another thing to look at, is because the tools are becoming more and more consumer-based, it doesn't take a lot of, I guess, tech talent per se to maintain them. It takes more like taking somebody out of finance and getting them versed on the technology, which I know there's a variety of ways you can either take classes and learn about it, but also attending sessions like this where you kind of brainstorm ideas around how to stack your data up. But the mechanics you can learn pretty quickly. I think the opportunities really probably come more from the functional side. So I would encourage, if you're looking for talent, I would look in your areas where you've got some talent that's really curious and wants to learn about staging data and works with data. Maybe they're working with a lot of pivot tables today and want to learn more. So
there's one more question.
Yeah.
How big is your team?
Yeah, so I've got actually 2 different teams under me. I've got a team that's more dedicated to the PeopleSoft side of the house. And so I've got 3 people that cover supply chain and finance. And then the rest of my team covers various aspects of the Oracle solution as well as Kronos. And that combined, there's an additional 5 resources there. So it's a team of 8 total. But again, I would say if you're trying to staff it, we're very lean on our staff, which maybe that's good or bad, I don't know. But when you really look at people that are actually supporting forecasting, Essbase, and the data visualization tools, Down there probably about 2 or 3 when it comes down to it, because a lot of these folks kind of do it as part of their job. So if you really got down to just pure FTEs dedicated to it, probably be 2 or 3, because then they carry other functional responsibilities or other insights into upstream data solutions like Kronos or Epic and things like that. Good questions, though.
I don't see anything else that's come through.
All right. If there's nothing else, I mean, certainly my contact information is always out there, and we can reach out. You can certainly find me a variety of places. And I think if there aren't any more, we can close a little bit early and take back some time. What do you guys think?
Good. Thank you so much for your presentation and your time.
Sure.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.
Thanks.